Good evening, Wildcat family. Welcome to the first edition of our speaker series that we're going to do this semester, featuring topics of interest for our families, students, and community. For our first speaker series edition, we have with us today Superintendent Paul Mensching, who will talk to us about a variety of topics related to district issues and district activities. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for our first one.
Absolutely.
So let's just start with something that we've been working on for about a year and a half now, bond projects. Can you give us an overview of where we are with the bond projects?
Okay, well, we've basically finished phase one, which deals with safety, security, some fun things like playgrounds. So our work at ECC, CCC, and HES is pretty much done. So we were able to make some upgrades, much needed upgrades to our facilities. Those are the buildings that we touched first, and so now we're entering phase two. The bonds have been let, or the work has been let for the second phase. We'll start at spring break, and then hopefully be done sometime in the fall next year. So the work has been a little bit slower than we anticipated, just because the supply chain, labor issues that the rest of the country has faced. We've had those same issues. So, but we're excited to start phase two. The design is underway, and then construction should start around spring break.
So phase two includes high school work mainly, and so we will see a different look to the high school. Right.
So high school and McEwen are the areas that we'll touch in phase two. So McEwen will see rooftop HVAC units will be replaced, roofing replaced, and then some paint and some other aesthetic improvements. The high school, yes, there will be a big change to the high school. So we're going to move the main entrance of the high school to what we call the commons side now. So right where the student entrance is. So it'll be more. It'll be more prominent, I think, recognizable. It'll be a bigger feature, but realistically, the safety aspect is improved too, as we have everybody focused through that one entranceway. So
very good. And Career Center probably saw the biggest changes in phase one, and I know prior to break they were still working on some of the additions. How close are those to being complete?
They should be done. I'm going to say around February. Okay. But so we have some ag classrooms, and then an additional classroom and shop area, which is where we will move our EMT class into. So that'll be done probably in February. We anticipate, if all the supply chains come through and everything else. But again, it's not a real rush right now, because we have room for those other classes right now. But next year we'll be adding a class, and so we're excited about that.
You want to talk about that while you're on it? Okay.
Sure. So we're gonna add teacher prep class. So it's a grow your own process, and so hopefully we're able to recruit more students into the teaching profession. I think everybody's aware of the need now, that there's a teacher shortage in the country, not just in Harrisonville, but in Missouri and in the country as a whole. And so we're excited to hopefully funnel students into that career path. So.
That's great. And the kids have really enjoyed their new playgrounds.
Oh, yeah, the playgrounds are awesome. That was a good.
And the security, all our buildings, when this is complete, will have secure entrances then, correct?
Correct. So we were able to put secure entrances at the Career Center. We upgraded the secure entrance at HES so that we funnel people through the office. And ECC, of course, is the biggest secure entrance right now. So that was a huge addition. It just changes the whole look of that facility, so it really looks nice.
It does, it does. We kind of touched on it, and I had this further down on my list, but you talked about shortage of teachers. So staffing in general, we're facing that even right now.
Correct.
You want to talk a little bit about the staffing issues that we're facing?
So, of course, I think, across the country, people are aware of bus shortages. Some schools have gone to multiple bus routes. We already have multiple bus routes or shifts, and so that's just one solution of many, but bus driver shortages, substitute teacher shortages. A lot of our substitute teachers are retired teachers, or people who are retired from other professions who go into substitute teaching to give back. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it has caused a lot of people to just be concerned for their health. And so we've seen a lot less substitute teachers. They've changed some of the requirements in Missouri to allow people to become substitute teachers a little easier. So there's an easier process. If you go online, do 20 hours of training, you don't need the college hours that were required previously. So hopefully that allows more access to substitute teachers. And then our general staff as a whole, we see shortages. I think for the past at least 25 years, we've seen shortages in math and science at the secondary level. Now you're starting to see in all subject matters. We still are looking for math teachers at the high school now. So there are shortages, and it's something that every school district is having to deal with. So, our budget, this kind of ties into the budget conversation, but, for the past 4 years, we've kind of looked at how to scale back our staff because we've seen a decline in our enrollment, a pretty dramatic decline in enrollment over the last 10 to 15 years. So, we've tried to compensate for that by reducing our staff because our staff numbers had not been reduced to that point. So we've taken a strategic approach to that reduction, and it's really helped out our budget. Our fund balances are more in line of where we really need to be. But I think it's a difficult balance where you talk about how many staff members to cut, and then when I say that, we cut through attrition. We don't just go terminate staff members, but as staff members leave, we just don't replace them. And so that process is difficult because you don't want your class sizes too big. Obviously there's safety concerns there, health concerns, but you have to worry from the budget standpoint too. So it's a balance that we look at every year, and then what is the availability of resources to hire new staff members to fill those spots, as we've seen with the math positions at the high school. So it's the challenge. And now, is the season when we start talking about budget. The second semester is really when we get into the budget. As the legislature comes back into session, they'll start talking about how much money they're going to allocate to schools. We are hearing good news on that front. The economy of Missouri is doing very well. So we're seeing positive news on that front, but the inflation is increasing too. So we have to try to balance, how can we pay our teachers but not get our classes too big. So it's always a challenge for sure. Right.
Because as you add teachers, that's not just a one-time expenditure. That is continuous, and but we were, with voters' approval, able to give raises with the 2020 levy issue. So that's helping us get more in line, also to be attractive to teachers.
Right. So we were able to increase our base dramatically, really, and our voters have been very supportive of the school district, and we are very appreciative of that, and we're starting to see the rewards of that. I mean, we see the bond projects, we see the levy that's going to increase our teacher salaries and staff salaries, so that's been much appreciated. And then, of course, there's been money that's come in through the emergency funds from the federal government, and through some different grants. So as we see that money come in, that's one-time money. The levy is ongoing money, which we can use for salaries. It's a little more difficult to do that with the one-time money from the federal government because it's not a continuous revenue source. So if you hire a bunch of teachers, that revenue source disappears, and then you have to terminate, and you really don't want to do that. So you just have to be fiscally responsible. So.
Very good. Okay, so we're going to shift gears a little bit. It's still deals with a little bit of money and a little bit of finance, but snow days. We haven't had any of those yet, lucky us. Now, I know we're taping this on a Monday, and there were schools that canceled today because of snow and ice, so we're in the season. What do snow days look like for us this year? How are we going to handle this?
So a few years ago, the legislature changed how the attendance is counted. So it used to be that you had to make up so many snow days, and they went from a number of day requirement to an hourly attendance requirement for students. And so as long as you meet that hourly attendance requirement, then then you're within the guidelines of being okay to say we don't need to make up those days.
Okay.
And so as much as possible, we try to allow those days to be flexible days. So if we can send devices home with our elementary students, so K through 6 we don't, or K through 5, we don't take devices home. But if we know that there's a big snow event coming or weather event, we are able to plan ahead, then we send those devices home with students, and then we can push content through the devices. It's not the most ideal form of delivery system. Obviously, we feel like the best education is with our teachers, and so in person. So if we can prepare for that, then there may be a time or two where we're able to say we're going to have a virtual day, or an AMI, which stands for Alternate Methods of Instruction Day. That's an allowable makeup day, and so I think there's a philosophical debate there, right? People say, well, just give kids the snow day so that they, that they can relax and teachers can relax, and all those things are very valuable, and I understand that too. However, we still have a responsibility to provide core instruction and make sure that our students receive the best education possible. So we don't want to say, hey, every day is a free day until. So if we can, we'll have some flexible days where we're able to use the AMI days, but it won't be every day, no. So there are options there. And the other thing that's important to note there is, if we are going to have a virtual day, we will let parents know ahead of time so that they can make plans. Sometimes those snow events come. It seems like, and maybe it's just because I'm old and I don't like getting up at 4 a.m. But it seems like those snow events all seem to come at 4 or 5 in the morning, and so. If we can't plan ahead a whole lot, then it's just going to be a snow day.
Right.
So.
And I really don't like my phone ringing at 4 o'clock to call all of you. But it happens, so maybe we'll get by without very many this year.
We can hope so.
Yeah. And let's go to another hot topic right now, which has been a topic for the last couple of years, actually. We can't seem to get out of the pandemic. So let's talk a little bit about our COVID procedures, because they've changed a little bit as the year's gone on. Where are we at with our procedures and our processes for that?
So the health department has changed their requirements in essence. I think the county commissioners passed a resolution which said no more quarantining. So students will not be quarantined. However, we still emphasize, if students or staff members are sick, they need to stay home. Symptoms look similar from one illness to another, and so we just strongly encourage people to stay home when they are not feeling well. And if they do test positive for COVID, the CDC has now reduced those requirements. So if they are non-symptomatic or asymptomatic, 5 days past their positive test, then they can return to school. And so that's really where we're at, is trying to identify the positive. And it's very confusing. It's confusing and frustrating to parents and to staff members and to administration, to board members. It's just been a trying time for everyone. And the constant changes of 14 days to 10 days to 5 days to all those things, it's been a challenge. And so quarantines versus isolations, who's doing it? Is the school doing it? Is the health department doing it? Who issues all those things? And so I used to teach history, and so I look back on the history of this country, and I think about the times when families were quarantined for things like tuberculosis. Well, during those days, it wasn't the school that went and knocked the poster onto the family door. It was the government, and so the health department would do those things, and those things are true today. We, for health guidance, we always look to the health department. So.
Yeah, turn to the professionals.
All right, absolutely. So
very good. And the only place that masks are required at this point are buses, correct? Because of federal transportation.
Federal requirement because of the federal transportation, similar to the airplanes and those other things too. So, and I would add, that we one of the changes that has been accessible to our students now is all school-age children can be vaccinated. So, I would encourage anybody to get vaccinated. It's impacted my family, as it has many families, and I had some pretty close family members die, and again, I'm not a health professional, but from what I'm told, that's the safest thing to do is become vaccinated, so I encourage that. So.
Very good. I think we've covered a lot of topics in a brief time. Do you have anything else that you wanted to address or talk about in terms of our school district?
Well, I just, probably, we talk a lot about safety, both health and physical safety of our staff and our students. We also focus on instruction. The one thing that we feel like we can control as educators, what we are experts at, is instruction. And so I don't ever want to get away without talking about that and our strategic focus on instruction. So we spent a lot of time the last few years trying to get common resources established for our core curriculum. And so our teachers aren't, if you have teacher A, then you have this resource, a teacher B of this resource. So we've made sure that that our students have access to the common resource, and that we're focusing on the same areas, and then we're evaluating our data using FastBridge. And so there's a real push toward data team analysis. So we analyze our data. How are our students doing? How can we better instruct those students? And so, parents might hear this, but there's a lot of conversation about data teams in our district and how we can analyze how our students are doing and how we can make changes to make our instruction better for our students. So we don't ever want to get away from our core purpose, and that's educating students. And so all those other things go with it too, but that's why we're here.
That is why we're here, for sure. Very good. Well, we appreciate you joining us for our first in this series of our speaker series.
Yep.
So we want to thank you for joining us too. We want to let you know that these are going to happen twice a month. On Wednesday nights, we'll put a schedule out on our Facebook and on our website for our speaker series. Our next one is set for January 20th. We'll be talking about scholarships, so this will be of interest, very big interest for the high school seniors and their families, but also for any high school student and maybe even some middle school students and families to plan ahead for your future, what scholarships are out there and how you apply and what you need to get ready for those scholarships. We'll have 3 guests, I believe, to talk about scholarships, so we hope you join us on the 20th for our second one. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about during this speaker series, or if you have ideas for topics that you'd like us to address during one of these, please send those to Jill Filer. My email, jill.filer, Filer, @harrisonvilleschools.org. We will try to get those questions answered if they pertain to something on this list or any questions that you might have. Or if you have some suggestions for topics, we'd love to hear those as well, and we'll try to work those into our schedule. Thanks for joining us, and have a great evening.